Hello, this is not John T. Rhapsodies, purveyor of awesome old-school audio stories. Mr. Rhapsodies has asked me to read his original stories, all written in the old-school style. If you like this story, please consider clicking the thumbs up icon and the subscribe button when you reach the end. This will help the channel and will help you stay notified of new stories. And so, let us together hear the words of old. Running for Dogcatcher by John T. Rhapsodies, Esquire. Disclaimer: no dogs were harmed in the writing of this story. Further, no disrespect of dogs in general is intended. In the summer of 1859, when the sun baked the few brick portions of the streets of our fair hamlet with all the tender mercies of an old bull in a briar patch, I was surreptitiously nominated for the position of town dog-catcher, against my will. The party responsible for this I would never determine for sure, but I have my strong suspicions. I came to learn that it probably all began, as such things often do, with a careless boast in the second-best barbershop in town. While leaning back in the barber chair, the wobbly one, not the new one which was reserved solely for the more important among us like the sheriff or the chocolatier, I said to Mr. Neversharp, part-time barber and part-time taxidermist, I didn't really need a haircut today. I was chased by a motley crew of stray dogs and needed somewhere to hide. If I were the dog catcher, unlicensed stray dogs would be a thing of the past. I would endeavor to do such a fine job that the dogs would even register themselves on their own accord and stay off the public streets and alleys out of voluntary moral obligation. I would later learn that this statement was taken to mean by someone in that barbershop that I had formally declared my candidacy. By late afternoon of that very same day, someone had scribbled my name on the outside wall of the sheriff's office, which functioned in those times as the town's official bulletin board to inform the public of political candidacies, shameless gossip, and advertisements for unwanted mules and adult children. The next day, two members of the Commission for Controlling Stray Dogs and Pigs approached me, one a retired lady boxer and the other a man who always wore a top hat and striped socks, who claimed he owned a cat with a fondness for knocking over kerosene lamps. They told me in their roundabout way that the Commission was aware of my candidacy for dog-catcher and had happily ratified said candidacy by an informal vote at the Ladies' Pinochle Society, which was a small but powerful faction in our town. When I asked them why in the world they would want me for the job, they said that the current dog catcher simply didn't want to catch dogs, and that anyone else would increase the odds, no matter how small, that stray dogs would be dealt with appropriately. Quite naturally, I protested, since I detested politics and disliked most dogs. I have carried a lifelong grudge against terriers in particular, having been bitten by my grandmother's stubby terrier not once, but thrice. But alas, my protests were ignored as entirely too late. Like a turkey in an oven pan, the die had been cast. Running against me was the redoubtable incumbent, Mr. Jedediah Bartholomew Clopers. He was of ancient lineage in our town and was already proudly displaying his slogan upon banners that read, "Vote for Clopers, I've been here forever." Clopers had been the town dog catcher for 7 consecutive terms, and during all that time had only caught 3 stray dogs, for which he was awarded a medal by those in town who wanted to remain in favor with his prominent family. 2 of the 3 dogs he had caught were later revealed to have been a mentally ill possum and an exceptionally large cat, though this fact was buried deep in the middle of the paper in fine print under the ad for gout remedies. My opponent's platform evolved to say, "Less dogs means less stray dogs." Clopers promised to reduce the stray dog population by over half, mostly by attrition and veiled threats involving suspicious sausages. But everyone knew that this was nothing more than bluster. My own platform, reluctant as it was lazy, and made in a moment of desperation, was freedom for all, but not for stray dogs. Those who loved freedom and hated stray dogs cheered me vociferously, though I was ignored by all the dogs, who continued to conduct their affairs with undemocratic indifference. My opponent and I had a series of lively debates, though they were mostly incomprehensible. Clopers accused me of routinely petting stray dogs, and even worse, feeding them. I countered that Clopers was guilty of nepotism in the hiring of his erstwhile second cousin by marriage, an ill-tempered Basset Hound named William, as assistant dog-catcher emeritus. And Clopers did this in full knowledge that William's heart would never be into the job, there being an obvious conflict of interest. It soon became clear to me, however, that the political deck was stacked heavily against me by those who wanted to avoid crossing the Clopers family, a family who owned the only mercantile store in our town, after all. I was soon haunted by scandals like a flea-bitten shadow. On Tuesday, handbills were passed out throughout town, accusing me of harboring an entire pack of stray dogs in my barn, even though I had never owned a dog or a barn. On Thursday, the town paper published an exposé assuring everyone with anonymous sources that I was the worst man who ever lived, for several reasons, including that I once referred to cornbread as merely acceptable, that I often use French words in casual conversations, that my garden consists almost entirely of rutabagas, and that I have been seen on multiple occasions carrying on secret conversations with a weather vane. On Friday, the mayor's wife announced that I was unfit for public service because I had stolen lollipops from children and didn't think it important to keep children safe from packs of stray dogs. Her maiden name was Clopers. My mother cried, and my father, who died 20 years ago, remained silent. Election day arrived like a blind date set up by a spinster aunt, unwelcome, uninvited, and smelling fishy. All those eligible to vote, along with some who were not, gathered at the polling place, an abandoned livery stable converted into a voting hall by the simple act of placing a card table in the middle. On top of the card table were two boxes, one featuring my misspelled name in the scribble of a toddler, the other featuring the name of my opponent in gilded letters surrounded by flowing filigree. Voters formed a long line clutching their ballots and suspicions, each of them resolved to rid themselves of stray dogs, cats, cutworms, or husbands, since many of the voters didn't really know what they were voting for. After all the ballots were tallied, there was a tie, 37 votes each. Suspicion of ballot tampering was very high, especially when it was made known that there were two votes cast by someone named Barkius McPuppynose. Upon further investigation, Mr. McPuppynose was, in fact, a 40-pound Labrador with amazing penmanship. When a runoff was declared, I refused participation. I had had my fill of the bitter fruit of political ambition and found it full of bruises and worms. Accordingly, I withdrew from the election, citing spiritual fatigue, the need to spend more time with my family, even though I didn't yet have a family, and a strong desire to finish my goal of making 10 ships in a bottle. Not 10 bottles with 10 ships, but one bottle with 10 ships in the same bottle. Clopers triumphantly won the runoff unopposed, and our fair hamlet celebrated by unleashing all of the local dogs to chase the stray cats away, which they did with all alacrity without bribery or other coaxing. When I returned to the barbershop, Mr. Neversharp raised his eyebrow and asked, "Shall I give you a haircut and a shave, Mr. Governor?" "You may proceed," I said, "but please try to leave what little dignity I have left. Also, please just trim the sideburns." And with that, I ended my brief but notable career in politics. I vowed to never again seek public office, though I did once run for secretary of the church committee on serving palatable pies, where my platform, more apples, less raisins and nuts, was met with widespread acclaim. But that, dear reader, is another tale. If you liked this story, please remember to click the thumbs up and subscribe icons. Please also consider telling your friends that they too should hear the words of old.